Good day, everyone, and welcome to another electrifying edition of the MarkHack 4.0 Preconversation Series, proudly teamed Experience Ignited, fueling the consumer journey. I am Antonia Anyawu, your host for today's episode, and I am the Programs and Learning Officer here at Eco Innovation Center. Well, if you were with us last Wednesday, you agreed that we kicked off with a bang. Yes, the session last Wednesday was on storytelling as fuel, crafting narratives that drive consumer loyalty. And we hear from four remarkable storytellers. We had Gospel, who is the founder of Waves Digital Service. We had Okiki, yeah, the associate director at the Hoop Creative. Sorry about that. I got kicked off of the network, but I'm back, and our generation was, and how we're so honored to have with us Gospel, Okiki, Jessica, and Olusesan, who did justice to last week's topic. And together they helped us. They helped us to understand that authenticity matters more than ever. And then we had Olusesan, who spoke about how data is not just a tool, but a compass. And then we also had Jessica and Okiki, who drove home the point that I is very critical in building brands that last. And today we're going to build on that momentum as we enter a new layer of the consumer journey, which is our theme for the year, actually. And today we're going to be talking about gamification and engagement, making consumers part of the story. I'm so excited because this is very important, because the heart of every thriving brand experience is engagement. And guess what? Everyone is driven by motivation, right? Everyone is driven by motivation. And the big win here is turning motivation into meaningful, scalable business outcome. And that's exactly what we're going to be unpacking today. And we've got two phenomenal minds joining us today. First, we have the one and only Lois White Jonah, who is the founder of Gameverse Africa. And next we have the remarkable Oluwanifemi, who is the Director of Strategy at Impression On. Good day, Lois. Good day, Oluwanifemi. So nice for you to join us on call today. Just
Hi.
before going forward, I'd like to hear your expectations. Just a quick 1 minute of your expectations for today's conversation. Let's start with Oluwanifemi. Thank you.
Hi, thanks, Antonia. It's nice to meet everyone. It's nice to meet you as well, Louis. So I think my expectations, I think in one way or the other, everybody does gamification, whether they kind of realize it or not. And so my expectation is sort of to help people to rethink it, particularly when it comes to how we do marketing and how you sort of go with consumer engagement. And so, yeah, basically that's what I hope I would be able to do when the questions come to me. So thanks.
Thank you very much. And next we have Lois. Lois, what are your expectations for today?
Thank you so much, Antonia. So basically it's to share and learn, right? Gamification is one particular topic that most persons don't really understand. Some persons are don't really like have an idea of what it really is. So today we hope to share and also to learn about this important topic.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, of course. And we're looking forward to hear from the insights that you would both share today and learn from it also. Without further ado, I'm going to be reading out the bio of our speakers. As you well know, we are people of honor here at Eco Innovation Center, right? So I'm going to be reading out our speakers' bio. And I'll start with Oluwani, who is a seasoned strategist with deep marketing roots across sectors like financial services, the FMCGs, tech, and energy. He's led award-winning campaigns for brands like Union Bank and Nigeria Breweries. He's also the founder of Maltly Inspires, a platform supporting millennials and Gen Z in crafting personal and professional narratives. Now, right, and then next I'm going to go to Lois White. Jonah, who is a senior UX developer, a designer rather, I beg your pardon. He's a game producer and the founder of Gameverse Africa, a company dedicated to building game ecosystem and educational hubs in underserved regions. With a background in game design, product strategy, and community development, Lois has led multiple game projects across Nigeria, including cultural, educational, and mobile games. He is passionate about using games as tool for empowerment, storytelling, and innovation. Ladies and gentlemen, drum roll, please. Yes, our two phenomenal speakers for today, with whom we're going to do justice to today's topic, right? And just in case you're here, right, whether you're here live on Zoom or you're watching the streaming version on YouTube, and you're here, join us for the first time and you don't know what MarkHack is or why you should be part of MarkHack, right? MarkHack 4.0 is the continent, yes, that's Africa's largest conveyance of marketing and technology minds, and it's happening live at the Landmark Event Center on the 23rd of May, 2025. Yes, that's just next month, less than 25 days to go. And you do not want to miss it. It's going to be so remarkable. And why you should attend is because it brings together marketing boldest thinkers, right, and tech sharpest innovators. And you want to be in the room where decisions are being made or reshaped or reevaluated. And this year, we're not just taking charge, we are celebrating its first of a kind MarTech Awards. Yeah, you had that right. Right. We're going to be celebrating innovators. We're going to be celebrating people making change happen in the marketing and technology sector of Nigeria, of course. And of course, this would not be possible without the creators, that's Eco Innovation Center and the GDM Group. And a massive shout out to our founder, the visionary himself, Mr. Victor Benga Alfolabi, or as he talking, and I know you are here to learn so much on today's topic. So let's just dive right into it. And with that, just give me a moment to catch my breath because I'm so excited. I'm so excited. So we'll just go to the first question. And yeah, if whenever during the conversation you have a question for our guests, please just use the chat box or the comment section on YouTube and we'll do well to forward your questions. Thank you very much. And thanks to the amazing people why we're here today, the audience. Thank you for joining us. We do not take your presence lightly. Yeah, so we'll go to the first question and I'll be directing this to Oluwani. Oluwani, as a strategist and educator, how do you define gamification and how can brands go beyond just adding gaming-like elements to create deeper, more meaningful engagement? Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Antonia, and thank you everyone for taking out the time to be on the call. So I think that when I think of gamification, in some sense, particularly when it comes to marketing, I think that a lot of people already do gamification without realizing it. So when you say someone that you are doing giveaway on social media, what you're basically saying is that if you can do something, you would get something, which is the elements of what comes into gamification. There's a reward system and there is an activity. Or when people are doing like promos, for example, you're saying that if you can scratch 5 bottles of Coke, for example, you would win a trip to Bali. And so what they're doing in essence is you're basically taking the elements of what it means in terms of gaming and you're building a system to engage the consumer. And basically the goal for that is literally trying to get like a performance outcome. And so when it comes to marketing, it might be that you're trying to increase sales, you're trying to increase revenue, or you're trying to increase awareness. And so there is an outcome that you are hoping to get from that. But what typically happens when we come into gamification is that we reduce how we do gamification, particularly when it comes to marketing, to just adding game-like elements. So there's an activity and there is a reward, and typically it doesn't necessarily always work in that direction. So when you think about it, for me, when you're thinking of gamification, there are different elements, particularly when you're thinking about it from a brand perspective, that different element that we need to think. Firstly, you have to first know what brand are you trying to do this for? What are the brands that you're trying to do this for? Then you're thinking about from the context of who are the audience. So you have to kind of realize that you are not just doing a generic thing and stamping it and going. You have to have a deep understanding of the audience such that when you're building something, it already flows within their system. There's something that I've always heard people say in marketing. They say in the type of marketing that we do today, you don't create the chaos, you are a part of it, or you join the entertainment. And so your audience are already having a conversation. And so basically the question with gamification for me will not be, with that knowledge that you have of the audience, what are you using? What are you putting together to ensure that you capture them? And then the other part of when I mentioned the brand is it has to relate to your brand. So for example, if I sell food, for example, and I'm say that the gamification I want to do is that you go and buy a laptop after. Yeah, people would eventually like it, but then there's really nothing that brings it back to exactly who I am and what I do at the end of the day. And so there has to be that context to say you're pulling to get the audience, but then you have to understand that the end goal is that it comes to the brand. Now, so the second aspect of the question, which I cannot remember, but because I know I'd read the question ahead of time, I know what the question is and I sort of prepared for it. It's, again, when you think of gamification, there are multiple things, and I'll use just one example so I don't keep talking as well. If you look at Duolingo as a brand, for people that know Duolingo as a brand, they don't typically have like, come and win 5,000 naira, come and win $5,000. There is something that helps with that you need to involve when you're thinking of gamification in your strategy, is that what is the motivation for those people already? What are we measuring against? Like there has to be like a standard outcome that people already know and people are motivated. Taking it back to our example that I mentioned, Duolingo, just the fact that they've created different systems such that people feel like they are crushing their goals. People feel like they are moving from one stage to the other, and then they've created a sort of conversation around it, even on socials, that it feels like people are a part of this conversation, even if what they are trying to do is for you to get to drive a particular outcome. It's one way that is being done. And if you look at other examples locally in Nigeria, I mean, I would share some examples of what we've done in our organization, but typical examples are if you look at the piggy vest, at the end of the day, everyone is waiting for their piggy vest ABC report to know what percentage, what grade they got at the end of the year, whether I'm A. But at the end of the day, if you look at what they are doing, is that they are driving you towards a particular outcome, which is for you to continue to save, to continue to use the platform. Now, if you look at how it is working, now you see that with what they are doing, you are using the platform, but it feels like you are achieving something on your own. So necessarily, you're not thinking like you are doing something for the platform. How you're thinking about it as the user is that you're doing something for yourself, whereas in the way it is that you are actually doing something for the platform. And so when you're trying to infuse gamification for a brand and you're thinking about them with strategy, it's very important to think about these different elements I've mentioned. Always have a performance outcome to say, what do I expect these people to do? Always kind of understand the audience to say, what are the nuances, what are the context that I have of my audience, and always try to create something that would take them through that journey, such that you are able to actually create motivation, create excitement, create things, and not just adding elements that makes it seem like gamification. So yeah, that would be how I'd approach the first question. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for that. You spoke so much about you actually broke down gamification for us, making us understand the basics of it, which is typically just a reward system, right? And then you gave us a very critical tip, which is whatever strategy you're employing involving gamification, that you have to ensure that the strategy aligns with your brand and you're driving the vision of your brand while also giving your clients a sense of ownership. And you cited that with the beautiful case study you gave about Piggyvest. Really insightful. I hope we're taking notes. And next, I'll be still on gamification. I'm going to be asking Lois White, as an advocate for game development education, how can gamification rather contribute to fostering both consumer engagement and skill development in the Africa community? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Antonia. So first off, many persons actually they view gamification as they normally tie it to just the digital part, right? Which is basically infusing game elements into whatever you're doing, especially when it comes to digital products like your app, your web apps, and all of that. But gamification goes beyond that, right? And then it's beyond the digital part, which many persons get to look at. For example, as a company, how do I increase the performance of my team? We are not performing during we did not for instance, company A did not perform well, or most of the team members did not really meet out their quota during this first Q1, right? So it goes beyond that. So as a brand or as a user, what you need to do is you really need to understand that gamification plays an important role in almost every sector that exists, and almost every company or user really needs it, right? So how do you please can you come up with the question again?
I'm muted. Thank you very much. Yes. So just as have you cited, how can gamification contribute to fostering both consumer engagement? How can it build engagement both by consumer engagement and then skill development in the African community?
Okay, so first off, it's for everybody to understand that gamification can actually do that, right? It's not just adding in game elements to whatever you're doing. Now, let's understand that not every business or not every company is actually involved in digital. They actually do digital services. Some are actually into other things. So how can that engage? How can that increase engagement? Gamification can do that by you first of all knowing what Okemo actually mentioned something about understanding your brand and then where you want your brand to actually proceed towards, right? So let's say you have a brand and then you want to create engagement, as you want to create leads, you want to create sales. All you need to do is know what pattern or what aspects you really need to put in your energy, right? You can put it into community engagement, right? And then that comes in via community engagement, giving reward systems to your community if you have community, right? And then that's if you're building the community. So let's say in terms of sales, you also mentioned giveaway, right? Which you can also use that as a form of, that is simply you gamifying your consumers so that they can come back, because the one important aim of gamification is to get users or is to get other persons to keep using your product or keep using your service so that you guys would make returns and then you guys would actually grow in terms of whatever you guys are doing, right? So one of the ways you can actually engage your consumer is through community, right? You can use community as a form of, you can infuse gamification in your community, right? Where you give them tasks, you give them something exciting for them to feel among. Because one thing I noticed about Nigerian brands is they don't really take their users along, right? They just come up, and then most brands, I think some brands are actually like, they actually doing better, but most brands in Nigeria, what they do is they just come and then they are pushing this particular product. They don't really like do so like deep research to know what their user need, know what their consumer needs, and all of that. So one of the ways you can go about it is for you to know what they need, and then that's you using gamification. So if a user, research has proven that if a user or if consumer, anybody that you're pushing out your stuff to, if they actually feel like they are being carried along, they would want to engage more, right? So it's not that whenever you want to push out a product, you want to do something to just put it out there without actually trying to get the opinions of your consumer or your user and all of that. So first off, you need to really do research and then make sure that you bring them on board. And then one of the ways you can bring them on board is not just by questionnaires, because we have some gamified questionnaires where people send like a large document of questionnaires and then you get to answer and it's never ending, right? But not just that, but you need to give them like engage with them, not just as community, because there are several products, so there are several services that don't really have community. So when they don't have community, they can use other means such as social media to engage with your audience. For example, I think Chicken Republic, they are very good with that. If you look at the handler of Chicken Republic X page, that person is really, really good. Like there is how he or she, whoever the person is, they tend to carry the user along and then their entire community. And then you see them making some certain jokes, making some certain comments, and then also replying some certain comments that there are some comments that you would feel that they would not really reply, but funny enough, they would reply and then they would just try to like make it funny, and then but they are still doing what they are supposed to do. They will still treat that matter, right? So gamification, one side of it is actually taking your users along with you, taking your consumers along with you. And then you can do that by sales, by community engagement, by social media, not just for you to wake up every day and then your social media page, you go there and then you just make a design, happy birthday to our CEO. This is Salah, happy Easter, not just you pushing out content. It's not always about you, right? And that is one of the things that gamification gives, like the one advantage of gamification. It's not about you, the users. Although, yes, it's about you, but you need to make your consumer know that it's about them, because the product is for them. Without them, you don't exist, right? So you need to make sure that you carry them along by using there are several means which you can do that. You can do that by social media, which is you trying to not just post random content, but see how you can even make some gamified illustrations or games. It doesn't, like puzzle games, right? That's like one of the simplest example that came to my head. You have these puzzle game, you have crossword games. You don't really need to build a game. You don't really need to build an app. You don't really need to like make it purely digital. You can just use those elements and then use the existing platforms that are in existence. Because for me, it's easier for you to use like social media where you already have millions and millions of people, where you know that, okay, fine, whatever you're doing has a tendency to reach a higher user than for you to just go build an app and then you be like, hey, you want to gamify, do you get? So you can just use the current platforms such as social media and then see how you can gamify that product. Okay, fine. Let me give a quick one. For instance, let's say I work with let's say I'm working with a clothing brand, right? I work with a clothing brand, and then I want to see how I can get users, and then I can just simply use gamification by designing something like a crossword puzzle, and I'll be like, okay, check out if you can list out 5, 6, 7 of our brand names, or you can test it or check like the label of our brands, you get this and that and that. If you can list them here, you get reward, or you get like 70% discount. And then you say, okay, people would want to engage on that post with that particular post. So you are not really like making it fully digital, but you're using the platforms that are already already existing to boost sales, to boost whatever you want to do. It might not really be sales, but it might just really be you just getting engagements to know that, okay, fine, this thing is actually working and this company actually exists. So there are several ways you can actually engage with your users. You can use social media. If you guys already have a digital product, fine. Then you can see how you can embed the gamified elements, leaderboards, scoreboards, and all of that. Make a good reward systems and all of that. But if you're not in the digital space, you can use social media, you can use communities, you can use there are other ones. So yeah.
Thank you so much. I felt like in masterclass. That was very, very, very detailed. Thank you so much. I think one of the nuggets that really stood out is it's not always about you, right? You should remember that you're not building your product in as much as sometimes you might have to use your solution, but the end factor here isn't you. You're building it for someone. And then you spoke about, you also drove home the point of including gamification in your community building, and you spoke about driving ownership to your clients, right? Making them involved in whatever you are doing. And with that, I'm going to go to Oluwani. We've had like a strictly for Lois about how strategies to implement, right? How to go about gamification. So my question to you really now would be, what are some of the most common mistake brands make when implementing gamification? And how can they avoid these pitfalls? Because you have been hearing about gamification drives engagement, which inevitably would also drive loyalty, customer loyalty. So everybody now, after hearing both of you speak, would be like, okay, so how am I going to implement gamification? What advice would you give from being in the industry? What are some of the mistakes, the pitfalls you've seen people make in trying to incorporate the strategies, and how can individuals avoid this? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks again, Antonia. So there are a few things. I'll start with, I think that you can stumble upon gamification whilst you're doing your plan, like maybe it's something that you just never even realized, but then you should own it as it comes. So I can be working on a deck or a plan for a brand, and then some of the metrics that I have put together somewhat looks like I am gamifying something. And then it's important that I take that as an opportunity to actually now build this out into a complete experience, such that I know that I am intentionally doing this and there is something that I am measuring again. So that's the first thing that I would say that would sort of cover the conversation. The other one is, typically when we think of gamification, we think of points, badges, and a couple of other things, and leaderboards as well. These are good and they're not bad at all, but you cannot let this be the entire experience that you are pushing out to the consumer. So you have to think of it like other things, like what are the, like I said in my other when I was speaking the last time, is what are the outcomes that you want to get from this? So do you want the audience to have mastery? Do you want them to belong to something? Do you have a purpose in mind as well? And then these different things can just be to show the progress towards that particular thing as well, so that the audience thinks like you are walking them towards a particular journey. If we take the example of PiggyVest that I gave, for example, every month you get a streak alert. Oh, you saved this month, thank you. But at the end of the day, the purpose of that is to firstly ensure that me and you are saving a lot of money and we build a saving culture. But secondly, for the PiggyVest company, is to ensure that we use the app. And so the experience of the entire thing doesn't stop as us having a leaderboard or having a point or badges. It's that there is progress, but there is a purpose towards while we are doing this as well, which leads me to another point of never ignore your user journey. One of the things that has stayed with me in marketing for a while is we need to stop treating consumers like they are static. So if you're selling something to me as a single man, the moment that I marry, there's the things that push me changes. So you kind of need to recategorize me in terms of how you try to reach me as well. And so when you're thinking of your user journey, you should always think about it as you want to work with the user. You want to be able to get feedback from people on how they are using it, because at the end of the day, I am the one that is going to use whatever gamified element that you put together. And so you have to be able to get that conversation with me to know how effective it is for me and how how this thing that I have put together is functional and how intuitive it is for me. The third one is don't lie. A lot of gamified elements are falsified. There is no real reward. Like you say, you will do 5,000 things and you win 1 million. Nobody ever wins that 1 million. Don't let's be lying. Like, let's be honest. We see a lot of brands that would create experiences like this, and then they would also pay influencers, and the influencers would be the one that would win the money, and then literally no actual consumer wins that money. Don't lie, tell the truth. If you only have 100,000 naira, and if you don't have money to give, you can have a purpose in mind as well. The point I mean, be authentic. Don't just go around putting out things that you cannot necessarily deliver on as well. And so be very authentic. Basically, if you're looking for a point for that is, and you don't want to use don't lie like I did, you can say don't over gamify without a real value. There has to be value that you are providing first of all, because then again, if for anyone that has done marketing, you kind of realize that it's more expensive to acquire a consumer than to keep them. And so if you have spent all this money to get somebody into your platform and there is no value that you are ready to give them, you're going to do all of this over again, and again. The fourth, I think I wrote like 5 points. The fourth one is one size doesn't fit all designs. And so you cannot take one size fit all and categorize that into it. So you have to think about it to say, do I want to do challenge based? So think about a learning, and maybe I should switch from brands to education now, for example. There are a lot of education platforms like Teachable, like Vasi, like Sense, Tao Stack, that if you think about how they're encouraging people to learn, is that they are putting different approaches. So you can either have like a solo-based planning, like the way we explained Duolingo, whereby I'm encouraging to you, or I can do like co-based. I attach you to a colleague such that you guys have quizzes at the end of the week to see what I've learned. Remember, like I said, the end goal is that I want you to learn. And so these different things are just part of the experience. They are not the main experience. And because I know that I am speaking to a diverse audience, I'm not just saying everybody come and do solo learning. I am bringing multiple things together to ensure that each person at different point in time is able to get exactly what they need. So think about it in a broad spectrum to say, what are the different categories of my audience and how can I address the different points that they require? And the last one is, there has to be something that is being measured. It cannot just be free flow. Like, there has to be something that is being measured. And you also have to realize part of the things that make marketing beautiful, whatever it is that we are doing beautiful, is there's always a place for optimization, for iteration. And so don't just stamp and say like done, dusted, cleaned up. Come up with a new things, change, like build up that experience as you learn, because we are all growing. As a brand, I learn. As a human being, you learn. And so we take that knowledge of ourselves and we use to build a better experience for the consumer, such that the consumer feels like they are growing with the brand, because you don't want the brand to go beyond the consumer, and the consumer, it has to be that fine balance as well. So yeah, those would be my points on how to avoid the common mistakes when it comes to gamifying.
Thank you so much. Our facilitators for today are on fire. Of course, those for last week also were on fire. Well, it's been really insightful. You spoke so much about being outcome focused. You also spoke about never ignoring the user journey, right? And then you spoke about something striking you said, and I really want you to buttress, because we have some of the startups from the hackathon, right? So we just gearing up to the main event that would occur on the 23rd of May 2025 at Landmark Event Center. If you haven't registered, our beautiful social media manager has dropped the link in the comment section and also in our chats on Zoom. So you can just click on the website, right? And then you can register to reserve your seat. Right, so we have some of the startups who have already participated in the selection phase, and then we have finalists who will be going on to the final pitch events come 23rd, right? So you said something really striking, which I think will be beneficial to them. You spoke about inciting the importance of ensuring that whatever strategy you're employing is driving your vision as a brand, right? And you mentioned that gamification doesn't always have to end in monetary rewards. You spoke about value and having value for your customers. Can you give cite a few examples how this startup actually implements gamification without having to spend money? Because we have a lot of cases out there where, just like you said, people would promise, and then at the end of the day, the influencers are the ones getting the pay, right?
Yeah.
Or and all of that. So can you just advise the startups how to implement this from their own capacity? Yeah, thank you.
Thanks. Thanks, Antonia. So again, every brand should have a purpose, and I use should because not every brand does, but every brand should have a purpose to say this is what I want to do. And I'm going to use an example of one of the startups here because I was part of the pitch. So for example, First Response AI. I was part of the conversation when you were pitching around what you are currently trying to build with helping your platform being the first thing that people would use whenever there's an emergency and all of those kind of things. And then you've talked about, and please correct me, Chris, if I'm wrong, you talked about also having a wallet system such that people can start putting up money there to save and all of those kind of things as well. So again, when you think of gamification, it does not have to be necessarily that I say you do something so that you win something. It's not necessarily only that. That's one form. There's the other form that I want you to do something. So I'm going to motivate you by making this experience fun for you, such that by the time you get there, you don't know that you are eventually going to get there. And think about how people learn new, and I'll get back to you on First Response, about people learn new languages on Duolingo. The goal is that we want more people to stay on our platform to learn new language, but we cannot. What do? We create reminders, we create leaderboards, we create quizzes, we create mascots to remind them every day that they have to learn. So you're building opportunities. So for First Response, for example, part of what I think you can do as a brand, if you want to gamify the experience for people, is that a lot of people don't even know what to do necessarily when it comes to emergency situations. So someone breaks his leg, what should you do? Someone vomits, what should you do? Someone is in a fire accident, what should you do? And so you can create that experience such that you are building, you are getting people to learn on your platform with gamified elements, such that you're also building an authority in the space, such that when an emergency occurs, because I have used your platform, I have engaged with your platform in such a way that I have become better. I know more about what it means to do first response. I have grown. But at the end of the day, I am trying to let you know that I am the authority when it comes to first response in emergency cases. In that way, when I eventually have something that requires me to seek medical help immediately, I think of you in that experience automatically. You are not promising me anything. You're not promising me to give me money. You have just created a system whereby I learn more, but I learn on your platform. So you get usage on the platform. And then in that way, that experience is complete for all the parties. So with gamification, there is the part of do something to win something, which is very interesting. But there's also other things that you can do when you bring these things together. Think about it. What is the experience I want to curate for my audience? And that's why I said that you always have to think about it as the last point I made was iteration, because you as a brand owner, you are growing. The audience that you have is growing, and you guys have to meet at some point to kind of figure out at every point in time, how do we grow? How do we elevate this experience for my consumer such that they remain here, they stay here, and all of those things. So yeah, I hope that helps, Antonia.
Definitely. Thank you very much. Right. Thank you. I'm sure we learned a lot from that. the time. I don't know who's touching the second hand. I don't understand. Who touched the clock? I'll just go right straight to the next question, and I'll be directing this question to Lois. Lois, given the growing interest in gamified experiences, especially in the African markets, how can gamification be leveraged to create cultural relevant experiences that really resonate with diverse audiences? And while we're at gamification, I just want to say, very congratulations to you on the game conference. So Lois, that's Gameverse is hosting the Game Expo, right? So congratulations on that. And we saw some of the remarkable things that really came out last year in southern Nigeria. So, and I think you do justice to this topic really. So how can we leverage gamification to create cultural relevance, right? That really resonates across borders with diverse audience. Thank you.
Okay, so I think the best way to go to answer this is to actually break it, right? So let me start with this. We have the most interesting thing about Nigeria is our culture, right? And then that's like one particular place that we have issues, right? I would say we have issues because you and I, we know that when it comes to culture, when it comes to Nigerians, there's always this, okay, this is for this, this is for this. We don't really go along, right? And then one mistake startups or builders or community builders or the likes, one mistake that they make is they tend to want to replicate everything that is working, especially in the West, in Africa, and also in Nigeria, right? That is like one major issue. Just give me 1 sec. Okay, sorry. So I was saying that one of the issues we have in Nigeria, it's based on cultural diversity. And then one thing about brands that are coming up, they just want to replicate what they see that is working in the West, I mean US and Europe in Nigeria. Sometimes it do work, but sometimes it does not, right? Let's take, for instance, we have lots of young persons that wants to build the stripe of Africa. They want to build the this of Africa. They want to build the this of Africa. So what they do is they look at a functioning product. They look at a product or a product or service that is actually working in the West, and then they just want to replicate it in Nigeria. And then most times it works out because most of these investors, since it's something that is working out there, they would want to put in their money. But then we've seen with time, right, that most of these things don't work out, right? A company raising funding does not mean that the company is doing well, right? Or that the company would do well. It just means that the company has a very nice idea that investors are willing to risk their money. And then most times or sometimes it doesn't really work out well, right? So now how do you build because Nigeria is actually one crazy market. If you've actually built a product or a service for Nigeria, you would understand that there's always this problem of, okay, how do I do this? Because you might bid for these persons, and then you have this other certain person saying, oh, this guy is actually bidding for this particular person. So how do you do that? Now, it can work for all products. It can work for some, not really all, but it works for some, and then it cannot work for some. The truth of the matter is it's not every product you can gamify, right? I've seen some companies, I've seen some brands that want to gamify. You can't actually gamify like almost everything. Yeah, there are some you can gamify. EdTech works best, education works best for it, right? You can gamify your educational product or education basically. And then people get to learn faster when things are being gamified, right? So it works best for edtech, it works for fintech, it works for the finances, the finance sector. It works also for different fields, but not every single field. So then how do you build? First of all, you need to understand the brand or the sector you're building for, right? That's like the first thing everybody should take note of. You need to understand where you're coming from, and then you need to understand what you want to do, right? There are some products that, fine, every Nigerian would want to use as long as the product is good, because we actually need that product. For instance, we need fintech, right? So we have OPay, we have Piggyverse, we have most of these applications. We are going to use them because we all need to make transaction one here or there, right? So with products like that, you can actually build for the general public, and then it will work out. But let's say you're talking about movies, right? Because I am not just basing I don't want to base my whole idea on digital products. I also want to make it relatable to several other persons, so that, because we actually understand that gamification is not just about digital products alone, but other aspects. So let's say I'm building a product, or let's say I'm building something that has to do with entertainment. Right. You have to understand that there are some certain movies I don't watch when it's from a particular region, because it's assumed that they don't really know how to make good movies. Nigeria, we're also struggling in that particular part. So then how do you build? You have to understand yourself, understand what you want to do. And then you can know, okay, which form of gamification would I embed in it to make so that I will not have a backlash. The Igbos would not come for me and be like, this product is against it, because there are some certain things that are actually a crime here that is not a crime in this other people's aspect, in this other people's region or sector or land or regions, basically, right? So when you actually understand that, okay, fine, I know what my product is about, and then you know what or who your users are, then you can now tailor that particular products towards that particular aspect. For instance, using language model. In Nigeria, most times we use just English, and then we use French. Most people that are building products, but then there are some products that actually do use language models, like, or language. They actually imbibe Hausa. They actually use Yoruba and the likes. But let's understand that not everybody that speaks Yoruba can read Yoruba or can actually write Yoruba. I see lots of products. Oh, we are building this. Let's build for the Yorubas. We are in Lagos. We want to use Lagos term. We want to use Lagos term and all of that. Sometimes it works out. Sometimes it does not work out. Because sometimes when of recent, we built a game for a particular company in Lagos, and then the whole idea of the game was to gamify the experiences, whereby, because we all understand how Lagos traffic is, how crazy it is, right? And then the whole idea was to build a game that would actually make people realize that, okay, fine, that this particular thing that they are doing, this rough driving and all of those things, are actually wrong, right? And then the best way for it to go about that was to come up with a game that is actually being like very fun to play, right? It's a very simple game that when you play the game, if you maybe make any hazard or you don't really understand the sign, an animal will come up, and then they'll be like, don't be an animal. And then, so because we're actually building mostly for, not really like mostly, but the campaign is based in Lagos. So what we had to do is we had to imbibe some Lagos words, Yoruba words, because the company is in Lagos, and then where they are region, where they have like lots of reach and all of that is in Lagos. And then we all understand that Lagos is a Yoruba dominated state or city, right? So imagine me now, or imagine our team deciding to build that particular game, and then we are using Hausa for it. Yes, the whole idea, let's have different cultures, let's have diversity, that would make sense. But then the result which we would get would not be as interesting as we're using just a Yoruba language model, whereby we actually embed some certain slangs in Yoruba and all of that. So that was why I said, understand who you're building for, right? So because we understood that, okay, fine, we are building for Lagos community, and then the Lagos community, they like having some Yoruba slangs and then it resonates well with them. We have to use that and then it works out well, right? So likewise, but one issue with Nigerians or early builders or people who are so ecstatic, because one thing I always know is there are so much ideas flying left and right, but it's just the execution. We want to build, right? But we don't take our time to do research. To answer that question directly, you need to do proper research, right? You need to do proper research of your product first. Understand your product. Is your product meant for everybody? If your product is meant for a particular region, a particular tribe, because it will be a disaster if your product is offensive to this other tribe. Because I've been to the north, I've been to almost like all the regions in Nigeria, and then everybody perceive a particular thing in a different way. Don't go and build something and then you make it offensive. Don't go and build because you want to build something related to the north. You go and use their outfit and all of that in, and then you misuse it. They'll come for you, and then when they come for you, you would not like it, right? So you can now use that, build a gamified experience using that, right? For the Muslims, for the Hausas, we have several cultures, we have several ethnic groups and all of that. So understand what your product is, who your product is for. Understand if it's for everybody, then you know how to gamify your experiences using different gamified platforms or models. You can use social media, you can use in-app reward system. So, and also what most persons don't really understand, gamification is a two-way thing, right? It's a two-way thing, and I think Femi said that, but not like this. It's a two-way thing. I gamify my product so that you would have fun, use it, and then let's say, and then if my product would actually give me money or revenue, I get to have more users that are coming into my product and then coming to use my product, and then I'll have more users, I can make sales, or I can have all of those things, right? But then you, on the other hand, it will be fun for you, and then it will be very, very, the reason why many persons, if you talk about gamification, the reason why they would always mention Duolingo is because it's the first thing that comes to your mind. That's like one of the biggest advantages of gamifying your product, right? Because I had fun while using this particular product, it will stick. And then I can also recommend that particular product or that particular service to another person because I enjoyed it. Nobody wants to use something that is very frustrating, right? So that's like the advantage of gamification. So for you as the product owner or the service, the person that is rendering that particular service, you're actually getting more persons to use it, right? Then for these other persons, they're actually enjoying it, right? And then them enjoying it, in the process of enjoying it, they would now learn, and then they would, if it's an edtech platform, that they use that to teach, they use that to learn, basically. They would actually to retentive in their head. I remember back then in primary school, secondary school, there was a way we used to memorize. Secondary school, when we learned about the periodic table, we actually had to use the periodic table to sing song, right? We even did that and using the reverse, the reverse.
D.
And then we also did that in CRK, where we used the sang about Paul first missionary journey, second and third, and then we all knew the songs back then, right? That is an example of gamifying experience. And then when you do that, fine, it's fun, but you would never forget it, right? So
Thank you very much, Mr. Lois. I can see you're packed. You're packed so much with insights, right? But fortunately, we have only 4 minutes before we have to come to a hard stop today's conversation. Everybody, Gameverse, that is Mr. from the whom Mr. Lois is the founder of, is hosting the Game Expo. You can go to his page, search it up, and also reach out to him. Of course, also to Mr. Oluwanifemi also, right? And continue the conversation from there. However, we have to come to stop today because we have already communicated an hour, and we want you all to be able to go back to your amazing day, right? So I'll just take a word a parting word from Oluwani, and then we'll call it a day.
Thanks a lot, Antonia. I was enjoying. Louis was in his professor face.
Yes.
I was just, my parting word would be, I know that we would all be, like end this session and feel like you have to kind of figure it out immediately. Take your time. Test a lot. I think that's what makes marketing and whatever you're building beautiful. Test a lot. Don't be afraid to test. And take your learnings, and one time you just figure out one of the things that would work. And so, yeah, that would be my parting word. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, let's hear a parting word from Mr. Lois. Just a sentence, please.
Okay, so, yeah, just a short one. Gamification is not about, it's mostly about using game elements, leaderboards, and all of that, with reward system. But it's more than that. It's more of making sure your users, your consumers, or whoever you're building for, or whoever you're reaching out to, is just to make sure that they actually learn and then they have fun learning it. Because when people do have fun when they have fun why they are learning stuff or why they are using a particular platform or services, they actually do come back. And then if you've not really understand, or if you don't understand what gamification is, you can actually reach out. And also, it's also good for team bonding. So let's say you want to see how you can engage, increase your team performance. You can do that. I think Susan of Sanosa, she actually, her company focuses more on gamification, and then they don't just do it digitally. They help companies, right? They help companies that want to increase their. So just get your research, do your research, reach out, and then see how you can apply it, and then you get the results. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I love the beautiful perspective we had today from the gamer and the founder of Gameverse, and also the perspective we got from the strategist, the director of strategy impression on. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you learned a lot from today's conversation. We thank you for joining us today. Until we'll come back again the same time, the same venue for the third series to this year's MarkHack Preconversation. We wish you the best. Thank you so much, amazing speakers, for joining us today. And thank you, our amazing audience, for making out time to join us today. That'll be all for today. Thank you. Bye, everybody.
You should really consider a radio host career. But thank you. Have an amazing. Bye, guys.
Thank you very much.